It is back to the grindstone for Washington. A lot of important goals to accomplish in the coming months. Joining us from the nation's capital with her 2022 agenda is Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Happy New Year and welcome back.
Happy New Year to you as well, and thank you.
Let's start with veterans, because I know this is near and dear to your heart, and you've got a big project that you want this legislation to be passed. Tell us more about this.
Yes, so we are filing a bill, the Tiny Homes for Veterans Act. Congressman Kilmer out of Washington, a Democrat, he and I are working on this legislation. I sit on the VA committee, but veteran homelessness continues to be an issue, and it's not just here in the Lowcountry or South Carolina, it's nationwide. And about a third of all veterans in South Carolina actually live in the 1st Congressional District. And we've all read stories over the years about homelessness issues with our veterans here in the Lowcountry. And so we're going to try to do something about it with this pilot program that would build tiny homes for veterans in various communities around the country to provide a safe place for them to live. And also it would include wraparound services like financial planning, job services, job training, education, et cetera, as well.
You know, initiatives like this have been talked about a lot in the past. What do you think it will take to finally get something like this off the ground and hopefully to create a pilot village right here in Charleston?
Yeah, really, truly, these kinds of things take consensus. And, you know, we see on the news and we see in our communities right now all this division, but we can't get anything done for the people of this country when we're continually fighting one another. And the way to work for the American people is to work across the aisle, to build consensus where we actually agree. And veterans and veteran homelessness this is not difficult. You know, these men and women in uniform, you know, willing to risk their lives for our country. And this is the very least that we can do for them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think our veterans deserve nothing but our endless support for the sacrifices that they've made. Let's move on to your 2022 outlook. So you've got a lot more on your plate. Tell us more about what some of your top priorities are going to be in the coming months.
Of course. I think there are three really big ones right now. One is on educating our kids, educating our children in the middle of the pandemic with Omicron raging across the United States, and it's getting worse here in South Carolina. Our schools and our students and our teachers are really starting to struggle a little bit, and keeping our eye on the ball and keeping our focus and keeping our school doors open, because we know the best way for children to learn is inside our schools rather than virtually. And I know this firsthand. So education is really going to be important to us going into 2022. Infrastructure and supply chain issues, they go hand in hand. So far this year, really very little has been done to alleviate some of these issues. And I don't really care what the administration says. When I was out Christmas shopping and when I go grocery shopping every week for my kids, there are empty shelves. Yeah. And the price of goods have gone up. I'm paying double what I was paying a year ago for gas when I fill up my car. And so supply chain and infrastructure issues are paramount, not only to the Port of Charleston and to the Lowcountry, but our entire state. Every South Carolinian is being impacted right now by these issues. And then inflation, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Inflation is hurting working families. Inflation has been up 6.8%, highest it's been in 39 years, and wages are not keeping up. Wages are about half that, the wage growth this past year. And with the cost of goods rising, what are we doing to alleviate inflation? Because inflation really is a tax on working people. And more spending and Build Back Better will not make inflation better. It will make it worse. And so we've got to address these issues in this year. And these things are paramount to not only our economy, but to families and individuals everywhere across South Carolina.
Indeed. And when we come back after the break, I want to talk more about proposed infrastructure to stem flooding here in the Lowcountry, which has become just increasingly an exponential problem for a lot of families here. So let's do that in 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're here with Congresswoman Nancy Mace, and she's joining us talking about her 2022 agenda. And among those, we're talking about flooding here in the Lowcountry and the infrastructure that's desperately needed to maintain the lifestyle that we've all come to enjoy living in South Carolina. But it's become a real problem, not just a nuisance. It's become a devastation for a lot of families. What is your plan? What do you think the city needs to do to make things better for its residents?
And it's not only about lifestyle, it's about our economy, right? Our economy is rests on and relies on tourism in the Low Country. And when we have flooding, we all know that when it sprinkles, it floods, especially downtown where a lot of those tourism dollars are spent. And not to mention all the development that's happening across the Low Country, because we're the 10th fastest growing congressional district in the nation. Everybody who visits, they never want to leave. And so we have enormous infrastructure issues. With regards to flooding, in 2022, we have the WRDA bill, the Water Resources Development Act, which will go through the appropriations process. And so as a member of Congress, we'll get to put in multiple priorities for the district, much like we did infrastructure. And when we did the infrastructure appropriations process, I actually had about $1.2 billion in there for 526. And then it was pulled out of the infrastructure bill when the bill went to the Senate. And so with a lot of House members, we didn't get any input on the infrastructure bill. We're going to try again with the WRDA bill. There are multiple projects that not only the city of Charleston, but different municipalities and counties throughout the 1st Congressional District, we all have varying priorities with regards to flooding. There'll be multiple initiatives that we're going to put money in for and put appropriations requests and appropriations priorities and ask for those requests. We know that downtown that we're going to need funding for a seawall. And there's pros and cons to that right now. And I know that some in our community are for it, some are against it, some want to see it modified. There is a public input process that the Army Corps of Engineers is going through. But we also know the city of Charleston is going to have to put up part of that funding. And the other part of that funding for that seawall is going to be federal dollars. And so it's really going to be important that when the community agrees to the plan going forward for seawall, that we find the funding at the federal level and make sure that it's there for that. That's an example. And then with regards to ensuring that the downtown peninsula is able to alleviate flooding when it does happen, pumping the water out, et cetera. They're building up on a seawall along the Battery. There are a number of different initiatives that the mayor of Charleston is working on. And some of those initiatives, there's a match and there's a requirement by the city of Charleston, and then federal funding comes into it. And it's just really making sure that at the federal level that we evaluate all the priorities of the Low Country. And then later this spring or early summer, we'll start putting in and applying for those things moving forward. The other thing that I would say too, now that the infrastructure bill is passed, there will be grant funding at the municipal, city, and county level to find funding for different projects with regards to transportation infrastructure.
So we're going to be working taxing? Not necessarily
taxing. I mean, the bill's been done, it's appropriated. And so, our goal will be to work with different stakeholders to ensure if they have questions about grant funding, what grant funding is available, ensuring that everyone has the resources, the support letters, et cetera, to have the best application packet possible. So we're going to be, fast and hard at work on those as well.
Well, solution cannot come too soon. And finally, Congresswoman, I'd love for us to just talk quickly about what the GOP is hoping to accomplish in November. It's a big year for the GOP to possibly take the House back. What are your thoughts on that?
Republicans are going to win overwhelmingly in November. We just saw yesterday the 25th Democrat to announce their retirement in the House of Representatives. And I do think that the U.S. Senate could now be at play, whereas 6 months ago, I would have told you it was impossible for Republicans to get in the majority there. The problem that has happened over the last year or so is that millions of Americans voted for a president that they thought would be center left or moderate. But instead, there's been this sharp left turn to socialist type spending, socialist type of policy, and the inflation is through the roof. There's a border crisis that the administration is turning its back on. The exit from Afghanistan made our country weaker on the world stage. I know this because I've been to the Indo-Pacific. I've seen what China is doing firsthand, and the threats from China and Russia overseas because of what we're emanating around the world and not holding China accountable, whether that means when they're hacking our federal agencies or their agents are hacking our federal agencies, to how we handle Taiwan, for example. And so because of that, it's going to be really incumbent upon Republicans to come up with solutions and policies that will alleviate and help these situations with that. And it's incumbent upon us as Republicans to continue to build on that going into the midterm elections, to show South Carolinians, to show the American people that we are willing to work to get things done for the American people and for every South Carolinian. And that's really where my focus is and where it should be. We did send out an annual report a few days ago to constituents in the 1st Congressional District. They'll be able to download it at mace.house.gov so they can see firsthand for themselves all of the things that we accomplished in 2021, and 2022 is going to be even better than ever. So we're very excited about what we're doing right now.
Terrific. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We're back after this.